Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small, a podcast about brand development, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the modern world. In this episode, I'm joined by Steve Raggiani, co-founder of Ate It, a review application highlighting the hottest food spots in New York City. Steve and his co-founder Joe realized there was saturation in negative food reviews outside of the food alone. Listen how they solved this issue by creating Ate It, the simplistic review application it is today. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Steve Raggiani. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
For sure. So I want to start out with your upbringing. So where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
Got it. So I'm the oldest of four. I have three younger sisters. We grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. My upbringing, food and entrepreneurship was a big part of my upbringing. My grandparents, they came here from Sicily. They opened up an Italian clothing store that was in Boston, imported Italian clothing. It was called Sette Bello. That was my grandparents' business coming over from Sicily, and my family owned Italian restaurants my whole childhood throughout New England.
Okay.
So I basically grew up in a restaurant.
Yeah, for sure.
I was basically I was the 13-year-old host that sat you at your table. I've worked every gig in the joint. I was a busboy, I was a waiter, I was a pastry chef, dishwasher, and I worked my way all the way up to a bar manager while I was in college.
Okay.
And yeah, all the family functions were in the restaurant, birthdays, Easter, that kind of stuff. My grandpa, my nonno, he would be singing Pavarotti to the whole restaurant. And it's funny, when I was super young, 10 or between 10 and 13, my mom always joked about me being a good food critic, because I'd give critiques to the kitchen and be like, oh, this is different than last time, yada yada.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how things come full circle, because I always thought that was just a joke.
For sure.
But yeah, food and entrepreneurship has definitely been a huge part of my upbringing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So the family business, was this Italian restaurant mainly family recipes as well, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I think it was a mix of, family recipes, but then also, trending things that were happening in culture.
For sure.
My dad was a trained chef, so he would kind of create the menu, but yeah, it's more traditional Italian for sure.
Yeah. So for yourself, growing up as a kid, did you mainly function inside the restaurant, or did you ever venture off into other entrepreneurial things, say starting any other brands or products?
As a kid, I was mostly focused on, what kids normally do, having fun, playing basketball, soccer were my favorite two sports.
Yeah.
But from an entrepreneur standpoint, the restaurant was where I really learned that side of the world in terms of business. Yeah.
So I saw you went to the University of Maine in 2003. What did you study there?
So I studied business administration, majored in marketing, and got a minor in international business.
Okay.
I was a business student just because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. My family really, pounded that home that being an artist or being a creative was never going to make you a lot of money, and you really need to be a business student and understand how business works. So I took their advice on that. And yeah, that was what I did. That was my major.
Did you ever get into any athletics or clubs during your time there?
Yeah, so I was in a fraternity called Phi Kappa Sigma. And that was an interesting experience, because I never would have thought that I was the fraternity type. But what I realized is, you make a lot of really great friendships through that, but also a fraternity is like a mini business. You've got a president, you've got a VP, treasurer, social chair for events. And I learned a lot from being in Phi Cap. It taught me a lot about accountability and leadership and politics and all that stuff.
Awesome. So I saw in 2006, you also did this thing called the American University of Rome. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what that experience was like?
Yeah, man. I mean, that experience was life-changing, because I believe, perspectives are everything, and traveling the world and seeing how people live their lives is really valuable instead of staying in your own bubble.
Hmm.
Being half Italian, this was a big part of me understanding my heritage on a deeper level.
Yeah,
And I'd say like one of the biggest highlights from studying abroad, of course, living in Rome and exploring the different food culture there and meeting different people was great, but visiting my family in Sicily for Easter was just epic.
for sure.
Seeing the streets where like my nonno and nonna grew up before they came to America to build a new life, like that was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. So the idea of Ate It, for the listeners out there who are unaware, Ate It is a food review app. And you guys founded this in 2018, you and your co-founder, Joe. Could you explain who initially came up with the idea and what was the overall inspiration behind creating this?
Yeah, so it's really funny because Joe and I we've known each other for almost 10 years now. We met in advertising. So after I graduated University of Maine, I moved to Boston and worked at Mullen. It's one of the best advertising agencies in Boston.
Okay.
And there was where I met Joe. He was a designer. Me at the time, I was an account guy. And we just kind of naturally gravitated towards each other, became really good friends, then eventually roommates, and just stayed in touch over the years. I moved out to San Francisco. And when I moved to New York to come work at Live Nation about 4.5 years ago, I was super excited because Joe lived in New York. He went to school here. We got to be closer to each other,
Hmm.
and I was really excited to just dive into the food scene because obviously was a big part of my life, and I just
Yeah,
lived in San Francisco, which is a huge food city. So it was kind of like an open new playground for me. And I was just like,
totally.
wow, I'm so ready to dive in here and like try all the best food. And what I ended up doing was what, normal people do. Like I was in the mood for burgers one day and I went on Google and typed in best burgers New York.
Okay.
And when I did that, I ended up in a little like, Yelp wormhole where I'm now scrolling through like tons of negative 1-star reviews of
Oh
people
yeah.
like complaining about things that had nothing to do with the burger I was looking for. Like one lady like complaining about the front door being open and it being drafty. Literally people leaving 1-star reviews and saying like the service was terrible. The burger was amazing, but the service was terrible and giving
Yeah,
that restaurant 1 star. And I'm like, I was kind of just like, that's kind of shitty. Like the
for sure.
restaurant suffers 1 star and they make great burger because
Totally.
one
Yeah.
person had a bad day. So that was kind of when I switched gears and started focusing more on trusted critics and trusted sources. You see these, best of articles from Eater and Infatuation and the New York Times and Thrillist, ranking their best burgers of New York. But
Mhm.
what I found myself doing is now spending over 20 minutes reading those lists, comparing those lists. This one's number one here. This one's number five on this list. Where is it in relation to where I am in Williamsburg?
Yeah.
And just like I felt like a detective, like when they
Yeah,
have
for
all those
sure.
strings going on the board and connecting things.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just like, man, this is so complicated. So throughout this process, I'm texting with Joe, I'm sharing, the different things that I'm finding around the city. And kind of like we're both going back and forth reviewing food over text message. And like one day it just clicked. Joe and I have a very creative energy between the two of us. So we kind of just like rapid fire texting back and forth. And it was kind of something along the lines of like, yo, like what if food reviews were as simple as a text from people you trust?
Yeah.
And it was just like succinct and trustworthy. And that was it. Like the idea was born over text, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So, how did you guys then initiate the app? Did you guys have any experience with coding yourselves, or was this a further experience following that?
Well, it's funny because the as soon as we kind of like landed on like, okay, I think that's something that people need because obviously it's a problem we have, and we start talking to other friends, and they're like, yeah, that's definitely an issue.
Yeah.
Um, our background is working with some of the biggest brands in the world and solving their problems, from Google, Airbnb, Adidas, JetBlue.
Mm.
Um, and we did that for over 10 years of our career at the time. And we said like, okay, like let's treat this like we're our own client. How would we solve this? So we started to just kind of map out a UX that made sense. Like, how do we help people go from being hungry and wanting really good food to getting it in like 3 thumb taps? And
Yeah.
we just started whiteboarding some stuff, using collaborative tools like Google Docs, sharing stuff back and forth, doing, because Joe lives an hour and a half north of the city. So
Okay.
we'd have these like virtual sessions. We meet up in person and just hash stuff out. And we kind of just got there through mapping out the UX and the flow.
Hmm.
And we're like, shit, like this could work.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, since we're both have a background in creative and marketing, we had the brand names, the logo done, the full creative identity before the product was even in use. Joe's an incredible designer, and
Okay.
this project was just like right in our wheelhouse in terms of tone and energy.
Hmm.
So yeah, like that was kind of how we got started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now your question was about app development. We don't know how to code apps. Like
Okay. So you guys
that's
outsource for that.
yeah, so it's funny how everything comes full circle. We're like, all right, so now we've got the UX, we got the flow down. Who can help us make like, I feel like we need a prototype of some type, some sort, so we can like start talking to people about this and see if we're onto something or not.
For sure.
So I hit up my fraternity brother and friend from college, Dan, who was a computer science major, total whiz, and had already started a company that was creating websites and apps for small businesses in Maine, and he had just moved there from Hawaii, and he helped us get to a prototype, and then we realized after talking to some people and like seeing their reaction to the prototype,
Hmm.
we're like, we need an MVP. Like we need actually something that people can download, because it was only able to live on my phone, and it wasn't something that people could just download and play along with their own phone.
Okay.
So we started looking for the right people, and we were just kind of like asking around, friends, networking, who knows an app developer that can help us that's not too expensive, because I've heard, horror stories of people paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars
For
on
sure.
apps. And obviously Joe and I wanted to make sure that we were bootstrapping this thing and doing it as affordable as possible.
Yeah.
So we ended up meeting a friend of a friend who had an app development agency called 222 Digital. He was one of the guys that I had interviewed throughout the process, and he just got it. Like,
Yeah.
we met over Google Hangout, and he showed me his phone when I was in the middle of like kind of taking him through the pitch deck, and he had a Sweet Chick sticker on his phone. Sweet Chick is a really popular fried chicken restaurant in New York. And he
Okay.
had a Sweet Chick sticker on his phone, and I was like, "You get it, dude. Like you're a foodie, you get it." So
Totally.
he was great to work with to get the MVP off the ground, and then since then we've had an investor slash advisor reach out to us through our network that wanted to get involved, put some money in, help us build Android, and provide his expertise to kind of bring some of the development skills in-house, so we're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
spending as much money. So that's where we're at right now in terms of app development.
Awesome. So when you pitched to the coder initially, what restaurants and maybe graphics did you pitch to him at this time? Because you guys had to have at least some backing to create a prototype. So was it very minimal at this time?
Yeah, we had no backing at that time. It
Oh,
was
okay.
all just, yeah, it was just like Joe and I putting in money that we had saved up just from life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything was designed because that's Joe and I's wheelhouse. So
For
we
sure.
had the whole app designed, and that was the benefit, because a lot of people, they have an idea for an app and it's just an idea, but they don't have the chops to actually design every screen within the app and where things should go from a UX perspective. We did all that ourselves, and then handed that to the developer to just do the coding. So
So
that was definitely an advantage we had.
for sure, what did collecting the restaurant names look like? Did you and Joe physically go in and search restaurants in different niches in New York? Or was there a process where you guys can just collect that, say, automatically?
Yeah, I wish I could say it was automatically at the
Yeah.
beginning, but no, it was definitely a grind.
For sure.
We we started out Ate It it was an Excel sheet. So
Oh, wow.
while Triple Two was working on coding everything that we had handed off to them, we said, okay, so how are we going to fill this app with the content we need? And
Mhm.
it started as a Google Doc between me and Joe, Excel sheet. And at the bottom was a tab for every food type, because one of the things with Ate It is these are food reviews, but down to the dish level. They're not restaurant reviews like everyone else. So
Yeah, yeah.
they're about these are about recommended dishes in New York that you could be craving. So at the bottom of the Excel sheet, we had burgers, ramen, pho, wings, sandwiches, soup, like all those things. And within each tab was all the data that we wanted to serve up to people in the app. So to get that, we were basically just doing what I did at the beginning of the story I told you,
Hmm.
searching best burger New York and reading every article and finding that most important 8-word review about that specific burger, pulling that out from the article,
Okay.
sourcing the writer from that article, and sourcing a quality photo of that burger and storing all that information into this Excel sheet. And by the end of it, we had a little over 1,500 dishes after we
Wow.
had gone through the initial exercise that got imported into the app when it was ready.
Gotcha. That totally makes sense now. That was going to be my branch off of that was, did you and Joe from the start, did you guys do a lot of taste testing yourselves too to add your own
Yeah, I
reviews?
mean, of course we'd go out to eat
Yeah, yeah.
and try some of the stuff, because when you're doing that process, you get wildly hungry just
I'm
looking
sure.
at food reviews and food articles and photos. But the process was all done digitally, and it was about scrubbing the internet for the dopest recos out there. Um, but the one thing that we did realize through that process is that there's a lot of really amazing small independent restaurants that are making incredible food,
Yeah,
and they're not getting the credit that they deserve because they don't have the sophisticated marketing and PR budgets and teams that some of these other restaurants do.
for
So
sure.
that was a big learning from doing this, is like, okay, these places got covered by Eater, Infatuation, New York Times, etc. But, there's a spot down the street that I know all the locals like
Yeah,
die for, and no one's written an article about them.
for sure.
And we said maybe we should start filling some of the gaps here. So we've started to put in recommendations from Ate It as a brand to start
Mhm.
building that credibility. It's not a huge percentage of the reviews in the app. I'd say it's 90% like trusted food media,
Mhm.
but we're starting to drop our own little hidden gems in there to start building credibility.
Awesome. So, what did you guys do, or what do you guys plan on doing marketing wise to get more, say, users to come to the app and review places in New York?
Man, everything free.
Yeah, social media, I'm sure.
Yeah, we started out, obviously the first place we went was Instagram.
Yeah.
And we started to put our brand out there and establish our tone of voice and our look and feel, and just get people to understand what it is. Um, we also did a lot of guerrilla marketing. We created some really fun stickers that we slapped all around New York, and really
Mm.
smart placements. It wasn't just about slapping them anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
So like popular restaurants where people are waiting in line, where we know our target audience is there, captive.
for sure.
Um, man, I would do anything. Like if I was on a flight landing in JFK, I would airdrop everyone on the flight
Oh my gosh.
a note that said "Download Ate It, the number one food source you need." Like,
That's
just
hilarious.
like I would go to the Apple store and change all the phones to Ate It, like like anything I could think
Oh
of
my gosh.
that has no budget restrictions. Like, let's
Yeah,
go. It's
for
on the
sure.
table. So, it was kind of that hustle and grind mentality to just kind of get it out there. We know foodies all go to these foodie festivals.
Mhm.
So you have like Eater was one of the first ones we went to. They held a really cool like 3,000 person event that Marcus Samuelson was speaking at.
Mhm.
And I printed these really fun flyers that look Joe designed them. They were to look like an iPhone,
Okay.
and we basically had the UX of the app on one side, and on the back side, we created a special password for people to get into the app that was unique to the event that we were at.
Mm.
So I just bought a ticket as a regular person with my girlfriend who helped throughout all this stuff. And we just went around and just started talking to people like, hey, what's up? Like, where do you guys find out about the best food? And we just instigate conversations and
Hmm.
give them that unique password. And that was really exhausting,
I'm sure. Yeah.
like going around and like basically being a street team, and promoting the app at these food events, whether it be EatsCon by Infatuation or the New York Times Food Fest or New York City Food and Wine Fest, handing out thousands of these cards with unique passwords on them. And
Hmm.
that was done intentionally so we could track
Track
downloads and where
for
they were
sure.
coming from. But I think a big learning for us from that process was maybe experiential isn't the best way to get downloads. It was great for networking, and we met some really cool people, and you never know what happens when you have a conversation. But
Yeah.
to get a large quantity of downloads, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So
Yeah.
that was one. But Instagram for sure. We saw, a few celebrity chefs pick it up, and when they started reposting about Ate It, we saw big upticks in downloads there.
Mm.
Um, and then most recently, after joining TikTok, we saw one of the biggest spikes we've ever had in the
Really
history of Ate It. Yeah, this past August,
awesome.
it was crazy. We were on TikTok before, and we weren't sure, because it had this reputation of being like, the dancing app.
I agree. I joined this summer after I figured out it's not just the dancing app anymore.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And your content's great. I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah, so like I started playing around with it. One of our investors was like, "Hey, you guys should seriously like reconsider like, you know, figuring out how you can leverage TikTok. There's a lot of activity happening there, and the algorithm,
Mm.
can help you."
Yeah, yeah.
So I started playing around with it, and I noticed there was this feature called green screen video and green screen.
Hmm.
So I was like, that's interesting. It's kind of like a virtual background in Zoom. And I was like, wait a second. What if I screen record myself using the app, which is a visually pleasing design
Yeah.
and something unexpected? What if I put that behind me and I made it look like I was playing with the app, like
Mm.
myself?
Yeah.
And I did it. I did some like I picked dim sum. There was like dim sum all over the place, and I saw this song was trending on TikTok that was from Mean Girls. I'm like, sure, why not? Boom, put the track to it, timed it perfectly. But it was like really my first time ever like using that feature on TikTok. And I
Yeah.
posted it like not even thinking anything of it. Like the caption was like noms, and like someone told me to put the hashtag for you page on it.
Mhm.
And there's no call to action. There was like nothing about that video that like told people it was an app other than like it being behind me.
Yeah.
And 24 hours go by and my phone starts like exploding. And I'm like, what is going on here? And Joe and a few other people on the team that were helping us were like, yo, go on TikTok right now. Go on TikTok right now. And we go on, and the views are just like piling up.
Oh man.
And Pete in the comments were overwhelmingly positive. Everyone was like, what is this? Oh my God. Look, this app looks so cool. We need it in Nashville. We need it in Tokyo. We
Oh
need
man.
it in LA. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And then we looked on the back end, and we were getting a download every 20 seconds in the App Store.
Man, that's huge. How many views did
Yes.
that video get?
So right now it's either past or approaching 150,000.
Okay.
So like just from that, and it's still like we get people every day kind of trickling in. But I think the interesting learning from that is obviously the Gen Z audience is there and they love what we've built.
Yeah.
And that's a huge win because they're the future generation of eaters.
Totally.
Um, but also just like seeing how they operate. Like there was no call to action, like I said. So they went out of their way to like go to the App Store and search Ate It because there's no
Mhm.
link in bio on
Okay.
TikTok. And then when you download it, you need a password to get the app.
Yeah.
So on the app, when you get to the password screen, it says, if you don't have the password, DM us on Instagram. So they went from
Wow.
TikTok to App Store to download to Instagram and said, hey, can I have the password? The cool thing
Man,
about what we've done there is now we have that one-to-one connection with each of our consumers and we can have a conversation with them.
for sure.
And the cool thing about Gen Z that I learned from that was like they're like super thoughtful.
Yeah, like that was
like
commitment.
like thoughtful, like even in how they reached out for the password. Like I've had like really rude people before be like, yo, what's up with this password? It's so lame that you have it blocked. It's like, well, we're in beta, so like that's the reason why.
Mhm.
And some of these people that reached out through TikTok were like, hey, could I please have the password? I really love what you've built. I wish you the best of success. And I'm like, whoa, that was really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, like that was just such a big learning experience for us through TikTok. And from there, we continued to make content. So check out the page. It's pretty entertaining. We've had a lot of fun with it, I think. But yeah, like going back to your question of like, what did you do to market the app? It was everything free, guerrilla marketing, Instagram, TikTok, trolling people on Twitter. Like
For sure.
that's it.
Love it. So, how can restaurants eventually access the app and then review the reviews that have been done for their restaurant?
So right now, the app is in its most simple form, and it will evolve
Hmm.
as we grow. But no, the restaurants cannot alter the reviews. They can't adjust them in any way. They don't have a separate login to go to their page. It's not Yelp where you can buy your good reviews to the top of the page.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, Yelp has been called out as, you know, being the digital mafia where they go to these restaurants and say, hey, pay us $200 a month and we'll make sure that your page looks top notch and all your 5-star reviews are at the top. Like
Yeah.
Aided is based on fully legit reviews from trusted critics. It's great food only. There's no rating scale. It's a binary system. Was
Yeah.
it great or was it not? And if it's not unaided. So we stand for the great restaurants that make that top quality food. We're here for them. For
Mhm.
the ones that make bad food, like they can be on Yelp.
Yeah, for sure. So, what are your plans to monetize the app, and what would that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. We get that question a lot
Yeah.
because, you know, Joe and I started this to solve a problem.
Hmm.
We to solve a problem and look out for the end consumer. And what we realized was, you know, each of those food companies has their own audience, but no one was thinking about the foodie that loves infatuation, New York Times, Anthony Bourdain, and all those things,
Hmm.
you know? So when we built that, we were kind of so focused on the product and building a community. And we still are. It's just around monetization. It was definitely something that caught us off guard. Like we were like, oh shit, like we have to make money off this. I forgot about that part.
For sure. Yeah.
So we've definitely taken that a lot more seriously in the last year, and we have a few plans modeled out for the future. But the focus for us is really building that community and getting hundreds of thousands of people on this app and building that community around trust.
For sure.
What I can say about the way we'll make money in the future is that we'll never make money off restaurants because they have a hard enough job and just live like growing up in a restaurant, like I told you before,
Hmm.
like it's hard enough to put food on the table as it is. And then you have these people like Yelp coming in, trying to extort them for their, you know, pushing their good reviews. You've got third-party delivery apps that have shown up like Postmates, Uber Eats, Caviar, all those guys that are charging the restaurants like up to 30% per check. Some
Mm.
restaurants basically break even after you finish the order.
Yeah.
So that we will not do. We will
Yeah. I
not make
respect
money
that.
off. We will not make money off restaurants. And then secondly, we will not introduce a traditional advertising model to the app. The last thing we want to happen is for Cameron to use Ate It and search for burgers and get a McDonald's ad. Like it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
we're really focused on high quality product that people will eventually pay for. It will likely be some type of freemium slash subscription model.
Mhm.
Um, but that'll be where we're focused on monetization. And honestly, there might be other ideas that come up. So if anyone out there listens to this and they have an idea how we can monetize them, I'm all ears.
Gotcha. So, with the model you guys have now, what would you say separates Ate It from the other food review companies? You've mentioned some of the other plans that you mentioned, but what are some other differentiating things?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few. So
Mhm.
number one, when you open the app, everything's sorted by dish.
Okay.
So not cuisine, because none of us would ever say like, hey, like let's go out to dinner. I'm really in the mood for American food. You'd
Yeah.
say I'm in the mood for a burger. So that's the way that the information is delivered to you when you open the app. It's
Mhm.
burgers, wings, pho, like I said before. Um, so that in itself, just the way that we're organizing the information is a differentiator because you open up every other food app and it's like Mexican, Italian, da 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 da.
For sure.
Um, Secondly, it's the one place you can go for an aggregation of trusted critics. You can go
Mm.
on Google and read all these articles in one place, but there's no place to get that information distilled down to the one thing that you want to know when you're on the go. So that aggregation piece is another point. The third is each of those reviews is 8 words only, and that in itself is quite different.
Yeah.
Similar to back in the day when Twitter launched and they had the 140 character limit, and everyone was like, "Whoa, what's this?" It's kind of like a different version of that. It's TLDR for food.
Okay.
Um, and then lastly, I'd say the brand and the UX is really unique. Joe and I's expertise in brand building and branding design and being able to just show the world what this brand stands for and be relatable.
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything else out there, especially in food. Everyone's kind of either got like a really refined approach, or it's just an app out there. So many food apps out there that
Mhm.
don't have an identity. They're just like an app buried in the app store, but no one knows what to talk about or how to talk. And I
Yeah.
think, if you go to our site or our Instagram, you see some of the content that we're putting out. It's like wildly different than what's happening in the rest of the food industry. So we think the brand is a core differentiator for what we do against the competition. So I think between those are the key points.
Mhm.
And when you look at the landscape of the food industry, it's kind of divided between food tech and food media. You have like on one side you have food tech, which is all about the utility, right? So it's
Mhm.
like your caviar or your Postmates that's helping you get it delivered to your house instantaneously, or it's Resi or Open Table that's helping you get the reservation that you want. So it's like really tech focused and utility focused. And then on the other side, that's where all your media is that you trust. So you have like your Time Out, Eater, Infatuation, New York Times, even Instagram influencers, celebrities like David Chang and Action Bronson. So those are your trusted people. So there's
Mhm.
nothing right now that is connecting the two. And that's what we believe Ate It is doing, is connecting food media with food tech.
Yeah, for sure. So, can you see Ate It expanding into new regions outside of New York in the future then too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the big dream, is that Ate It is in every major food city in the world. Um, right now, obviously, we need to stay super focused as we're just a small team and kind of still in the building phase.
Mhm.
But we have a lot of demand. Like I said, if you go to that TikTok video, you read the comments, people want us in every city, even the weird ones.
That's awesome.
But the strategy for us is to win in New York City first. It's that Frank Sinatra strategy. If you can't make it here, you can't make it anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's from a geographic expansion standpoint. From a product standpoint, we're the simplest way to find the best food, and what that means will expand as well. So right now, when you open the app and you're in the mood for chicken parm and you pop open, the chicken parm at Emilio's Bellado, right now you can go get it at Emilio's Bellado. But in the future, that will expand into, can I get that delivered to me at home? Can I get the meal kit to make it at home? Can I get the New York Times recipe that featured that dish that shows me all the ingredients to recreate it? There's a lot more that can be unlocked from that, which is exciting. So it's not only about eating at the restaurant, where we'll expand.
Awesome. So I like to conclude each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would that be?
That's a good one. What would that be? I would say to set big goals that make you uncomfortable. Think about that end goal every day, write about it, manifest it into existence. Take baby steps every day to get there, and the universe will take care of the rest. I think it's really important to set those goals that really, really get you excited and a little bit uncomfortable when you're talking about it in front of other people. But the power of the word and the power of our minds is really, really, really important. And I think people underestimate it.
Yeah, totally. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Aidit at aidit.nyc.
Yeah, and I created a special password for your listeners. So
Awesome.
If they download the app, it's starting small. So
Sweet.
They just plug that in, and you guys should be able to get in and check it out.
Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of Starting Small. If you would, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, follow Starting Small Pod on social platforms to keep up to date on future guests.